Welcome to Banking on Cannabis, the podcast where we talk with the leaders who are shaping the strategic future of the cannabis industry. I'm your host, Terry Mendez, CEO of Safe Harbor. At Safe Harbor, we help the industry bank, borrow, operate, and grow. Today, we're joined by a true pioneer in the cannabis industry, Wanda James. Wanda, you're widely recognized as one of the most influential voices in cannabis. You're one of the first Black women in America to own a licensed dispensary. You've been tireless in your advocacy for equity and reform. You've served as a public official in Colorado, and you're a lifelong Safe Harbor client. Thank you very much. The political winds are shifting, and a new movement on the Farm Bill and hemp regulations, Colorado changing policies, Washington continues to debate reform. Few people have been in the front row seats. Your story, gosh, you told me it over at breakfast the other day. It's one of leadership, courage, conviction. I'm honored to have you on with us today. Welcome, and thank you for making time in what has to be an incredibly busy schedule.
Thank you so much for having me, Terry. This is fantastic. And I'm so glad that you are doing this because, I think people need to hear, from our standpoint of what this industry feels like and what it looks like. So thank you for doing this.
Oh, absolutely. And, I want to know more about you. Our listeners want to know more about you. What got you involved in this cannabis industry in these early days? And, what's been your biggest challenges?
So in 2009, I had just come off of being the campaign manager for Congressman Jared Polis, who is now Governor Jared Polis, and coming off of Barack Obama's National Finance Committee. So my husband and I knew that the Ogden memo was going to be coming to the states, which allowed for the sale of medical marijuana. And we wanted to get into the industry because we wanted to be able to highlight the issues that communities of color have gone through with the drug war, primarily with the demonization of this plant and of cannabis. At the time, over 800,000 people a year were arrested for simple possession. And here in Denver, those arrests, 34% of the arrests in Denver happened to be people who were Black. And in Denver, we make up less than 9% of the population. My brother was also one of the people who early in his life was arrested for cannabis possession. For about $164 worth of street weed, my brother lost about 10 years of his life. 4.5 of those years was spent in a privatized prison system picking cotton to earn his freedom. So this has been a lifelong challenge for us to be able to call attention to the unjust feel of what was happening with cannabis and this plant and communities of color. So when the opportunity came to be able to own a dispensary and to own a cultivation facility and an edible company, we really wanted to be able to put a Black face on that to be able to talk about the harms of the drug war.
And you've built a very successful business, Simply Pure, and served in public roles. And now we've seen, 41 states, territories go legal, whether it be medical or recreational.
Yeah.
What's your position now? What do you think the next evolution has to be?
So look, I have been a part of this industry since the very beginning, and I have seen every iteration of cannabis sales and attempted legalization, and we have twisted ourselves in knots trying to make it okay to be able to get banking. I mean, in the early days, we didn't even have banking. Excuse me. We literally had to pay our employees. We had one of those, cash machines that you see in, all of the Scarface movies, with just running cash through. And we literally would have a company that would give us a check stub for what our people should be paid. And we literally ran cash through that and handed them their paychecks in cash. That's how crazy this was at the beginning. So fast forward 16 years later, as you're aware, we still don't have a bank account. We have a depository where we can have somebody come pick our money up from the dispensary, take it to some unknown vault somewhere in Colorado, and then they let Safe Harbor know that we've deposited, 20,000, 50,000, whatever that amount is, into the bank, and we can write checks on it. That's not effective. That's not good business. It doesn't allow us to get lines of credit. It doesn't allow us to have merchant accounts. It doesn't even allow us to be able to speak to serious investors or traditional investors because they're not going to invest until you actually have banking and the ability, to work with their investment. So there's only one answer, Terry. There's only one. And 16 years later, it's time for full-on legalization, full stop, nothing else. Federal legalization must happen, not descheduling, not rescheduling, not decriminalizing, not safe banking, not anything. It needs to be full-on federal legalization, period.
Fair enough. And, how do you full on legalization would change the dynamics within a state for people that have invested heavily in grows and kitchens and labs and dispensary units? How do you see the economics shifting? If the legalization were to happen.
So I see nothing but, positive things happening. And I mean, there's always folks, fear mongering as to what will happen next. And most of the things that I hear about fear is, oh, when we have full on legalization, well, then, CVS will be selling cannabis, Whole Foods Market will be selling cannabis, 7-Eleven will be selling cannabis. Companies and products do very well. My husband is also a chef, and we own a number of restaurants.
Cool.
We have small restaurants, and we have for the last 30 years. We've owned 6 restaurants, and our restaurants do very well in a world of cheesecake factories and the fact that you can get food at 7-Eleven. I mean, so there will always be an opportunity for dispensaries to do well, for delivery to do well, for cultivation to do well. But yeah, it will be a different industry once we have full on legalization. But let's take a step back. Where are we at now? Terry, you're in banking. You see everybody's bank accounts. This isn't working. It's not working for anybody.
Mm-hmm.
It's not working. Big businesses that are bringing in $1 billion and then they're losing $1.5 billion. They're posting losses, at 40, 60, $80 million. Small businesses are almost non-existent. They can't hold on any longer. Landlords are gouging us. 280E tax code is absolutely strangling every business that's out there. And the dynamics of bringing in investment that we have to twist ourselves around, it's just not sustainable at all.
So when people think about banking, that's what they think about. They think about depository, but you're right. It's merchant banking. It's access to capital. It's lending. It's part of the consumer experience. Right now, as you're aware, very few banks bank cannabis. Less than 8% of our nation's banks bank cannabis. And people are sitting on the sidelines. So rescheduling to 3 or legalization really does open that up. I'm really excited about the fact that you're running for Congress, and I appreciate that you're doing that. You've made a career out of beating the odds your entire life. Your opponent, I've done some research on her, and she's been a staple in the Colorado area for a decade. Why'd you decide to run, and what's your path to victory?
She's been in office now for 3 decades. It will be 30 years in November that she's been in office. And in the 30 years that she's been in office, she's passed 2 bills. 2 bills. 30 years, 2 bills.
Do you remember what they were?
I don't. I don't, because the last...
They weren't meaningful. My point is, I've been here. I lived in Colorado for a decade. I never heard her name before. And so, fair enough.
I mean, and that's exactly the problem. You look at one of our amazing congressmen, Joe Neguse. He's been in office since 2019. He's passed 7 bills. Jason Crow has been in office since 2020, and he's passed 2 bills. And even Brittany Peterson last session passed 2 bills. So the current congressperson has no ideas. She's not showing up for any community, not the Black community, not the Latino community, not women, not young people, not the business community. It's just non-existent. And we are now in a place in America where democracy matters. Democracy is on the line. And if people who are in office, and it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're sitting on, people who are in office right now are not out here fighting for Americans and American democracy, then there's a problem. And this seat is a D+29 seat, which means it is a extremely safe Democratic seat. I believe it's like the 8th or the 10th most safe Democratic seat in America. This means that we have an obligation to be able to stand up for the things that matter to Democrats. And that's, you know, Pell Grants and education, affordability for people to be able to afford their rents or buy their first home, um, to be to be able to make sure that things like SNAP are well funded. And those are just the very basics. I'm also a vet, you know, and as a veteran, I'm disgusted with what I'm seeing on the federal level right now when we're discussing war crimes or the fact that we have our largest battle group in the Caribbean right now. I'm a former naval officer, so I know what that battle group is all about. I know what is in the water right now when it comes to submarines that are following that battle group.
Hmm.
That is a ridiculous show of force for the Caribbean. It's an obscene show of force for the Caribbean, and it makes no sense.
Yeah, fair enough. But we have seen some swings away from capitalism. You saw New York go to someone who is a proclaimed socialist, and you're a business owner, so I'd imagine you're somewhere in the middle there. You know, what's your view on, from a kind of an economic perspective, capitalism, socialism, something in between?
So I am I am definitely not anti-capitalism, but here's the thing, you know, you can be all different types of businesses and business owners, right? You can be an Enron or you can be a Ben and Jerry's,
Hmm.
you know, so that really comes from the idea of who is leading the corporations and what are the corporations doing to be a part of the communities in which they serve. Just because you're a big business doesn't mean that you have to rely on corporate greed, you know, or that your CEO is so remarkably overpaid that we're talking about paying them $1 trillion, right? While they are not being taxed. I do believe that corporations and people making over $1 billion should be paying a lot more in taxes. I do. I believe that being a citizen of this country means that those who are given a lot, you know, should be able to give a lot back. And if you actually do have a $1 billion company or a $1 trillion company, you are using America's roads and you're using America's airports and you're using our parking spaces. So, you know, therefore, you know, that tax liability or the charge to be able to be a part of being an American citizen and being able to have that $1 billion corporation, I do believe the tax structure should be larger. I don't believe that you should be taxed out of existence. I
Hmm.
just believe that it should be fair. And we should never in America be discussing whether a child should get lunch or not. I don't believe in free lunch. I believe in lunch, period.
We believe in lunch, and I think that's what we do here in Colorado, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
I appreciate that very much. You know, you mentioned a couple of things from an economics perspective that was important to you. I think as we think about what's important to the cannabis industry, maintaining an economic structure that allows us all to be, you know, very much successful, and defining what those levels are. I remember back in the early 2000s, I think it was Barack Obama that said, "Hey, anything over 250 grand." You know, fast forward 20 years, and 250 grand for a family of four in New York City doesn't seem like much of a lot.
Not a lot.
And so those numbers have
Not a
to
lot.
switch. You know what I'm saying?
Of course.
And you know, as we get into this industry, people work hard, right? And people want to say, hey, you know, I put my shingle up, and because I put my shingle up and took the risk, I was able to, you know, achieve that lifestyles of the rich and famous, or that 1% thought, or top 5% thought. But I agree with you that, you know, at the end of the day, it needs to be fair. And so, you know, specifically, is there anything, you know, that you look at as unfair? And I'll give you an example. You know, I was working on a farm, and, you know, folks were able to deduct their Cadillacs at the same time as their tractors, right? And the Cadillac, because it's over 6,000 pounds, you know, became farm equipment. And I always kind of scratched my head, you know?
I mean, that is a perfect example of a ridiculous loophole that we do for taxes, right? I mean, it makes no sense. As a matter of fact, there is a whole TikTok place on how you can buy a Mercedes G-Wagon and write it off because over 6,000 pounds and
It's over 6,000 pounds.
right.
It's craziness, right?
It's crazy. And these to me are some very basic things that, we could be taking a look at in America to be able to make this make sense. And that's kind of been my mantra lately is make this make sense because there are so many things that we go through that just don't make any sense. And for example, taking this back to the cannabis, space, for 16 years, we had been running a great business and I want to be able to compete, with all of the other businesses around me, but I'm stuck paying a 280E tax penalty, which is the same tax penalty that Pablo Escobar would pay if he was, around today, right?
You're federally illegal,
It's
right?
federally illegal. What sense does this make? It removes my ability to compete, my ability to attract the kind of employees that I would like to have, and to be able to invest in my employees, right? I'd love to be able to
Hmm.
give my employees a 401k. I would love to be able to give my employees, the opportunity to retire, all of those things, right? But that's what happens when these tax rules that we have had in place for so long, they just don't make sense any longer. And you're right, the amount of money that we're talking about, $250,000 for a family of four, um, in New York City, is not a lot, right? So we've got to be able to sit down and take a look at what makes sense today, and to be
Hmm.
able to make it fair for each income earner. And Terry, that's the other reason I want to go to Congress, right? I'm one of the few people that would be in Congress that has met a payroll every 2 weeks. I'm one of the few people in Congress that has funded their own businesses now for decades.
Hmm.
Um, I know what that feels like, right? And as a small business owner, my husband goes to work every day. He preps the food in his restaurant every day. So we are literally still working in our businesses. We don't have the, $40 million, buyout if you fail at being a CEO. It's it just there are so many things in this country right now that just need to make sense. Healthcare needs to make sense. Spending the amount of money that we're forced to spend for healthcare, and the fact that people can go bankrupt. We're the only civilized nation on the planet that will bankrupt somebody over having a heart attack, and that doesn't make any sense to me.
It's incredible. I looked at my healthcare options just yesterday,
Hmm.
and I was on the Connect for Health Colorado previously through my small business, and the exchange premium went up 29%
Yep.
year over year. I said,
Yep.
"Holy smokes!" And I was thankful that I now work for Safe Harbor and was able to figure out something slightly different. But a family of four easily spending $25,000 to $30,000 a year just to have adequate high deductible healthcare access doesn't sound too affordable to me, right?
My husband
Uh,
and I are exactly in that ballpark, and we're both healthy, and my gosh, it just went through the roof this year on us, and I thank God that we're able to pay, but I mean, it's obscene, and it's not even a gold healthcare package, right? We still
no,
pay
no, it's
an
the bronze
extremely
high deductible.
high
You
high
know,
deductible, right? Right?
I didn't
So
even look at the gold plans. Those were 40 and 50,000. I said that's crazy.
crazy.
And so I appreciate that you're, respecting the fact that people struggle. And in this industry where your average customer makes 55 to 75 grand a year, your average employee is in that range as well. Two people get together, they're making 150 grand, and 150 grand even here in Colorado is a lot of money. It's a lot of money for the employer to pay. If you're the employer, every year you're thinking you're buying a high-end Mercedes, but for the families, it's just breaking even basically. It's a little more than what you need.
Well, and it's even crazy. We'd even looked at for Simply Pure to be able to purchase insurance for our employees, and that became so expensive for the small business owner to give them that option. And then the option that we would be able to afford would stop them from being able to go through the Connect to be able to get lower health insurance.
Subsidies, yeah.
Subsidies. So it was going to cost us a tremendous amount, and they were going to get less. I mean,
So the answer is just no, and it becomes a self-fulfilling circle
yeah.
of a problem that you could never resolve. It's a chicken and egg problem.
And healthcare, I mean, call me crazy, right? But being able to go to the doctor and being able to eat, I don't think is an American dream. I just think that that is just something that we as people, and as a society should ensure happens at every level without a doubt. That's who I am as a human being. And it's like I said,
Yeah.
I would never think that a child should be shamed because your parents didn't put enough money on the books for you to have lunch. I would never expect a child to spend all day trying to learn and making their brain work without food. They don't let me and you go to a meeting, or a banking meeting and sit there all day without feeding us. They would never, they would never do that, right? So we shouldn't expect that out of our children.
There's
And
got to be something in between
there
for a
does.
middle class to get access to adequate health care. That might not be as extreme as the Canadian option, which sometimes you wait 3, 6 months to see a doctor. And if you're, sick, people complain about, hey, I can't get access to a specialist immediately. So there's some aspect of capitalism that still needs to be there. And then, versus something that costs $30,000 a year for the just okay plan.
And, I'm a University of Colorado regent, so I sit on one of the most powerful boards in Colorado, and we
Nice.
oversee University of Colorado Boulder, Denver, UCCS, and CU Anschutz.
Hmm.
And the one thing that I will tell you about becoming a doctor is we limit how many students can get through medical school, and we limit how many doctors that we have. And that's a confusing piece to me as well, because we should be able to allow more doctors so that they are not working the hours that they are working,
Hmm.
um, and that there is more access to doctors and healthcare and opportunities for family and clinics in people's neighborhoods, right? So that they're comfortable going to see their doctor. Uh, to me, it just doesn't seem like it would be this hard to figure out. But as my father always used to tell me, he was like, follow the money and you'll find the issue.
There you go. There you go. So we've talked about a couple of things: access to banking and capital and merchants' accounts, etc. Legalization of cannabis versus, we'd be very thankful for rescheduling to Schedule 3, but legalization opens up all sorts of new windows of opportunity.
Yep.
Access to healthcare and affordability in general, and so all major talking points. But also, on the back end of that, you're in a district that is what you call the D29.
Deep.
It's a very stable Democrat, controlled position. But the Democrat that's sitting in that position today, is not using that position to forward the outcomes of folks here in Colorado or nationally in our country. Only doing 2 bills in 30 years seems like a disgrace. Seems like you have a wonderful opportunity to move forward. Did I miss something?
You wrapped it up very well, I mean, it's an exciting time, right? It's an exciting time. And I think when things get difficult, for me, I see that not just as a challenge, but as an opportunity to see where we can do better. And this is an amazing time to find phenomenal opportunities for us to be better.
Awesome. Well, Wanda, it's been an absolute honor having you on Banking on Cannabis. Thank you for being a longtime Safe Harbor client,
Yep.
for representing us here in Colorado and starting Simply Pure back in 2009. And I'm glad that Safe Harbor had the opportunity to fix that for you. By the way, nobody should be paying their customers out of the till. This kind of seems like a crazy idea. We share your vision and for a stronger, more inclusive, not only cannabis industry, but country. And so, to our listeners, thank you for joining us on another episode of Banking on Cannabis. If you've enjoyed today's discussion, please subscribe, leave a review, and share the episode with colleagues across the industry. We have more conversations coming your way. And Wanda, if somebody wants to donate to your campaign, where do they find you?
So you can go to Wanda, the number 4congress.com. That's Wanda4congress.com. And it will tell you everything about me. And you can definitely drop a dime. That would be nice.
So let's support Wanda for Congress and help her be successful. I appreciate everyone.